Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about how to set up a podcast for free in 3 easy steps, because I know when I set up my podcast, it was fairly easy just because of the fact that I was using anchor.fm. This is not a sponsor post at all, but I wanted to make a tutorial because a lot of people are trying to put together podcasts, and this was the easiest solution I had. One of my biggest mottos in life: keep it simple, stupid. The KISS mentality. So here we go. Anchor.fm is a program that has been basically created by Spotify. And what you'll do is you'll go to this website, anchor.fm. You'll go in here, click on the Get Started. You will then create your account, where you'll type in your name, your email address, your password. If you already have a podcast that is set up, I highly recommend you can always import an existing podcast into anchor.fm. So this is an amazing and easy to do that. Fill in all of those details, and anchor.fm is basically like a free software, web-based, as well as on your iPhone or your Android, where they do have a mobile app as well, and that's where I do all of my recordings from. So what you'll basically do is do your recording on whatever source you want, whether it be the anchor.fm app, whether it be through the Anchor FM desktop version, your GarageBand, your Zoom calls, anything that is going to basically keep it simple as well as cost effective for you. So now once we're in here, what we're going to do is we've filled in all of our information and we've set up an account. So you'll get your email verification to get that account set up. Once you're there and you have it, go ahead and log in. So what I'm going to be doing is I will share my screen with you to see what each of the different settings are in here. So as we've logged in, you will basically get into your dashboard. So from your dashboard here, you will have your main settings, where you're able to basically create a logo, an image, something that you want people to see your podcast on. So something that's going to be creative, something that's going to be visible and easily brandable. So this is where you can create that via Canva, and it's also another free app. I will link these in the description below if you've never heard of these, or if these are something new that you want to get started with. So you would basically create your image or your profile. From there, you would put in your podcast name. You would put in a little description about your podcast, as well as with the podcast there, I'll go ahead and click on the edit button so that we can see a little bit more of the details. So in here, you'll see the podcast name, Conversations with Zareen, the podcast description. So mine, I've kept it as a monthly podcast, and you can do it as frequently as you wish. And then your podcast cover art. So again, using Canva, a free tool and an amazing tool to be using to create that cover art. Once you've uploaded that, you can save that in there. You can always change it as needed, but I always recommend create something that's visible, something that stands out from the crowd. So whether it be something that has your face on it, whether it be something that has some bold text, take a look through like either the iTunes podcast, the Spotify podcast, and see what works for you and what is going to build your brand. The next thing is creating a category. So for mine, I selected health and fitness because of the fact that that was the main category that called to me with the topics that I would be addressing over at least the next 12 months of the podcast. Feel free to pick and choose what suits your category. And then the next thing, podcast language. Mine is in English. There's a variety of different languages to be selecting from. Then you have your advanced options, so the content, clean, explicit, whether you want to show the Anchor logo on the cover art, show the voice message button on your Anchor profile, and all of those you have the option turning on or off. So The next thing is moving over to the account settings. So you'll basically just be filling in your about you, your email address, your website, and you will then also be able to create custom URLs. So you would create one. So for example, for mine, my custom URL is Life by Zareen because that is the brand that I go by. However, the podcast is Conversations with Zareen. You can then link up all of your connections. So all of your other social media profiles like Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all of those different handles in there, you can basically set up and customize so that way it is all linked back directly to you. So go ahead and make sure you guys have all of those populated, because when you are setting up a podcast, you want to make sure visibility is key, and you want to be able to have your listeners be able to reach out to you in different platforms, whatever they connect with the most. So that basically goes through the podcast settings. So you'll go ahead and save that. Then now let's start with the dashboard. So we'll go back to the dashboard. A couple things on here. So you're able to see that it is available on 6 platforms. From here, the 6 platforms, one of the biggest and best things about Anchor FM is you don't have to distribute it. They will do the distribution for you. So if we go into the settings and you see the distribution, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail shortly, where I'll actually show you how they're doing the distribution, and if you already have a podcast set up or if you already have distribution links set up, you can already use those and just easily plug them in. So this is such a simple way for you guys to either be merging your podcasts in or creating a podcast from scratch. The next thing is we're able to see the plays, the estimated audience, the unique listeners, whether it be in the last 7 days or in the last 30 days. And that is where having these analytics is so meaningful, especially when you're starting out. You don't want to be paying extra for all these analytics. This is such a great way to be looking at it and looking at all of your podcast performances. So again, over a period of time, this should probably be increasing. And as you come out with new podcasts, it should be. You can see that I have been slacking on promoting my podcast. So if you guys haven't listened to it, Conversations with Zareen, it is anchor.fm/Life by Zareen. Definitely go take a listen and enjoy it. I would love to hear your feedback in the description below. So with that, if you hover over any of those, you're able to see like the statistics for each of those podcasts, whether it be for that single one or all of them together. And again, you can always download these as CSV files. They're all available in different options for you to basically be going and analyzing this. And this is great where over a period of time, you're able to analyze your podcast. And this is all in one place, and this is free. You are not paying a dime for any of these analytics or anything, and they're very simple and straightforward for a simple layman to basically go in and see how your podcast is doing and performing. And again, you can see my 2 episodes. I have the pre-launch and the actual podcast itself, the first episode that launched. I will go into more detail again as to why I did a pre-launch and why you should do a pre-launch. The next thing is your listeners. My main target audience is India. So that's where having that 81% in India is good. That is where I want to continue to grow my reach as well as internationally, because you want to try to have as big of an audience as possible. Then again, you're able to see the different listening platforms that people have been listening on. So you're able to see that the majority of my listeners are coming in from Anchor FM. They are basically able to be redirected to their listening choice of platform. Again, you can also look at the devices, whether they're coming in off of the web, whether they're listening from their iPhone or any other device. So that's where, again, statistics and being able to download those CSV files are also amazing. The next thing is for your gender and your age. So, depending on what your podcast is about, you will also have a target audience for that. So, whether you're trying to aim to get females between the ages of 20 and 30, this is where, again, you're able to see all of these statistics and get all of this valuable information, again, for free. And this is all visible in your dashboard. So, usually, if you've just pushed out a podcast, it will take a couple days for it to populate based off of the people that are going to be listening to it, the plays that are taking place for it as well. So that is where it is really beneficial. So on to the episodes. So you'll see that these episodes, I have my pre-launch episode and then the untitled. So those are both the ones. You'll see that there's also drafts and then there are ones that are being published. So the reason why some of these ones are in drafts are I actually recorded the episode in the mobile app for anchor.fm. So in here, you're able to see that I have created the recording, which was done in the mobile app for anchor.fm. And from there, it's super easy where Anchor FM allows you to connect with your co-host. So for example, with everything kind of being remote right now, it is so easy to go into the mobile app, download it, open it up, and start your recording and then create and tag your other co-hosts. They will join the same recording. You're able to then create that audio file and download it. One of the benefits of having it able to be downloaded afterwards is so that way what you can do is you can basically put it into your own editing software. So you can either edit the audio in Anchor FM, or what I like to do is I love my free apps. So I like to use GarageBand, which is free on Mac. And this is where in the next step, I will go over how to actually go in and do some of the editing, where it is so simple, so easy, and it is pretty basic for anyone to be able to go ahead and do this. And again, even if you have like an iPhone, your iPhone also comes with GarageBand. You can also do the same edits from your iPhone. So again, your episode analytics, I have chosen monthly. You'll see it come up as monthly in there. Going back to the episodes tab, you're able to see exactly what has been published, what are drafts, and what is saved. Now, so going into why I did a pre-launch episode is basically because of the fact that when you are setting up a podcast for the first time, Anchor FM does take a few days up to a week to basically get all of the distribution levels set out. So basically they will connect with Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and distribute all of your podcasts out over there. So the reason why you want to have that pre-launch episode or even just like an intro or a clip or a teaser, something to introduce your podcast, number one, visibility. Number two, to assist you with the pre-launch and to get your distribution channels set up. So from your distribution channels, what it does is it allows you to ensure that everything is set up in place so that when you do launch your first episode, it distributes out everywhere so that you are getting maximum visibility. Always coming back to visibility, visibility, visibility. All right, so now on to the next tab. So, money. This is where, depending on where in the world you are able to monetize your podcast. So, if you are given any sponsorships or anything, I definitely recommend do take advantage of them. You are able to add those into your podcast, integrate them in, add them as a clip in between, before, afterwards. And what happens is when you actually start out, anchor.fm gives you your first monetization. So this is an amazing opportunity to take advantage of that. So I highly recommend, if you are given any sponsorships, take advantage. You do the recording yourself, and then from there, you basically get it integrated into your clip. And it is super seamless, super easy to do. If there were any sponsorships that have ended, it'll come under the ended tab. If there were any that you've ignored, it will come under the ignored tab. All right, so then there's also a section for listener support. So this is where if you wanted to set it up, your supporters and your listeners also have the opportunity to donate, to support you. And there are always tips for increasing revenue because who doesn't like some free tips? This is an amazing opportunity to be able to monetize your podcast because that's basically going to be also one of your end goals is to monetize it and to be able to actually earn money from what you'd love to do. So over to the settings. Let's actually start with like the distribution now. So here you have your RSS feed. So in here you're able to see that if you have a website or you're wanting to integrate your podcast into that, this is where your RSS feed is going to be beneficial. Then you also have the other listening platforms that you have set up. So Anchor FM is the one that you've created. Then all of the other ones that are there are ones that Anchor.fm has already distributed automatically for you. Then there's also manual distribution. So these ones are either they're in the process of getting set up, or if you already have them distributed, go ahead and add in your own URLs directly to get them linked and used. Then you have the advanced settings section in there where you're able to basically enter in all of your customizations and go through those one by one. One of the things that I highly recommend is that with the distribution, enable everything. It is again about visibility. So just make sure that everything is enabled. I have to go in back again and just kind of make sure to see what's going on with the Apple Podcast to make sure that I do get on that platform as well. If there's any additional information or an application that I need to complete, to just kind of go in and check that and make sure all the boxes are checked off. Then go ahead and save that. Then back to the settings. So that pretty much covers everything in the settings. Now on to the new episode. So if you're creating an episode for the first time, you can record directly from your computer onto, like from your desktop onto Anchor.fm. I personally prefer the mobile app. That was probably the easiest version. You can also use GarageBand, you can use Zoom. There's so many different free platforms that are available. Definitely use the free options. Then once you have recorded your episode, you can always drag and drop it once the episode is there. If you are recording from your phone, it automatically gets transferred, so you will see it in your episodes as like a draft that has been unpublished. Then if you are going into the episodes again, you're able to see the messages, if there's any listener voice messages to your episode, the library for all of the files that you've uploaded previously, as well as transitions. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about music in a bit, but Anchor.fm also has free music because music creates mood, ambiance. It kind of just gets and sets the vibe of your podcast and what you're wanting to share and portray with your listeners. So with that, that basically covers how to create that episode. And what I did again was basically set it up through the mobile app. I'm able to then add in my co-hosts very easily. They then join using the link, and then we are all set. Then once you're done adding in all of your music, all of your transitions, everything that you're looking for, go ahead and make sure you save that episode. And even if you have like a couple drafts going, you can always save it as like draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, and just kind of record it as like season 1, episode 1, and just kind of make sure you keep it consistent so that way you know for yourself when you're coming back in that you know where to go and what it was for. Now on to music. Again, as I mentioned, there are so many different options for music. One of my favorite ones was premiumbeat.com. So there was the anchor.fm that had free options in there. The Premium Beat is by Shutterstock. What I like to do is I actually ended up downloading probably about 10 to 20 different previews that I actually downloaded afterwards. Probably listened to about 100 to just kind of see what I wanted the vibe of my podcast to be. Based off of the clips that I downloaded, I then overlaid it with the voice for my intro and outro. And from there, I basically then tested and felt what the best vibe was for what I was wanting to output to my listeners. So, a couple things to make sure. You want to make sure that you are using royalty free music, unless you're creating it yourself, which is amazing if you can do that. Then, if you are using royalty free music, again, if you need to buy a license, for the song that I used the same one for the intro and outro, different segments of it, and I just purchased a standard license. However, there are so many amazing free options. But I definitely recommend that if you are going to be finding the music that you're going to be using, don't keep changing it, because you want it to be basically your brand, so that automatically when someone listens to that song or that intro or the outro, it automatically gets associated with you. So I definitely recommend, if you are going to invest in something, invest in the music that you are going to be putting in. Another option for music is the YouTube audio library. So this is where a lot of people don't know about it, where there are so many free options available as well. So definitely go check out the YouTube audio library. I will link all of these in the description below, as well as there are so many more options for royalty-free music that is free of cost, as well as ones that might be at a minimal cost or a one-time fee. Or if you're going to be doing different songs regularly, there are also subscriptions that you can purchase. All right, now moving on to GarageBand. I wanted to show you this free tool if you guys are MacBook users. Otherwise, there are so many other editing options out there that are super simple and super easy to use, as well as they are also free. So I definitely recommend, if you have a free option available to you, learn how to use that, because usually you just need something fairly basic to maybe take out some take out some background noise, any kid interruptions, which, moms, it is bound to happen, and don't feel bad about it. Either leave it in as like a nice little blooper or take it out, whatever you need to do. So this is where I like to use GarageBand, and I'm going to show you how I use it and how I create a template. So I basically have a template for my podcasts that I use now, where I have my intro, I have my podcast that I can basically just plug, play, and change out as I have new episodes. And then I have my outro that I have saved. So you can see, like, there's a lot of splicing done in this, because there was a lot of editing and just different words that were cut out each time. So you're able to kind of see that over a period of time. So the first thing, when you go in here on this settings, you want to make sure you have your metronome turned off, because you don't want that metronome in the background going tick, tick, tick. The next thing to do is also go into your podcast preferences, just to make sure your output devices and your input devices are all what you need them to be. Go through each of the settings and just kind of make sure they're where you need them to be. This is where, with GarageBand, if you do have other podcasters or other co hosts that are going to be basically working with you or in the same room as you while you're recording, you can also set up multiple mics. You can set up the same mics. You can set up different inputs. We won't get into all of that today, but I will go over just some of the basic editing, which will allow you to output your podcast as quickly as possible. Then go ahead for the audio recording. I like to keep it as the 24-bit, whatever the default settings may be, making sure that I'm no professional. So I will try to keep as many of the default settings as much as possible, as well as kind of whatever settings I need based off of what I have researched and found. So in here, if you are setting up a new podcast, you can have your different inputs, your different outputs, and basically set up those settings that way. The next thing is also, I definitely recommend creating different files, folders, however you need to do your organization. And I recommend keeping your intros and your outros separate. If you can even create the voice and the music for the intro and outro separate, that's even better, because then you can adjust it and tweak it as per your need. But once you kind of have it finalized, it's a great way to just kind of keep it that way and keep it consistent. All right, so whatever file you may have selected, you would basically just drag and drop it directly inside and have it come into the podcast, into GarageBand. Then where you see those numbers, by default, I think it had it as one of the first two options. You want to make sure that it is set as time and not beats and project or beats and time, just because you want to see your axes at the top there as time, basically. So that way, when you are editing, you know whether you want to clip out a couple milliseconds, a second, 10 seconds, or even a couple minutes with a podcast. That makes it so much simpler. So just make sure that setting up there is for time. Otherwise, it does get a little confusing and it makes things a little smoother. And again, make sure you have the metronome turned off and the numbers turned off. Then where you'll see the cursor that I'm moving along, this cursor, you're able to basically just hover over it, click on it, and drag it to wherever you want to edit or take a clip and edit in or edit it out. And that's also where you can also listen to specific rows. So each of those different rows that you have, you'll see where I have like the intro licensed, the podcast recording, and then the outro licensed. So if I don't want to hear that, I can just click on the turn off the voice, and then that intro licensed doesn't come into when I'm maybe listening to it to edit a certain segment or a certain area for it. So over here, this little area, this cursor that I'm putting on the top right there, that is basically to zoom in or zoom out for the whole podcast. Then when you are ready to export the podcast out, just highlight, hover over everything that you want put out, click on the Save As button for it, and it will save as a .band file. So that way it'll open up in GarageBand. When you are ready to save it and actually export it as a podcast, you'll want to then go into the export section, and I usually like to do the MP3 version. WAV version is also really good. It depends on what the file sizes are, but you do want to keep the highest quality and the highest resolution as possible because it is your baby. So you want to make sure that it is the best that it can be. So once you're done that, you'll go ahead and click on export. Then now let's get into zooming into a section. So now I'm going to show you how to actually edit out sections of it, whether it be a couple milliseconds or a couple seconds. So you'll take your cursor to where you're wanting to split out a section or cut it out. You will then go over to the edit button at the top left where you have your menu at the top. You'll then use your Command T. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in further into that specific section that I'm looking to blip out. Go into edit, split region. At the playhead, I will click that once, or the Command T makes it so much simpler if you have like the shortcuts. Then I will move it over to the end of that blip. Again, at that point, I will go back again and click on the edit button. And then from there, I will then go over to delete and move. If I click on the delete button, it basically deletes it, but it creates a gap. So whatever that time width was, it is just empty space, which is not typically what you want when you're trying to edit and compress a file to make it smoother and basically remove that blip. So we'll undo that and I'll show you what you'll want to do. You'll want to click on the delete and move button. That will basically shift everything from the right over to the left, so that way it is seamless. That is our goal and intention typically when we are going to be editing out a blip. So then you can go ahead and listen to that, make sure that's what you want it at, and make sure it's smooth. Then again, just kind of move on to the next section that you want to edit. So what I usually do is I will record the podcast, I will kind of put it together and then replay it. And as I'm going through, I will go through each of the blips that I'm wanting to basically cut out, rejoin everything, and then take another final listen at the end just to kind of make sure everything is smooth and the transitions are as smooth as possible, because you want to get it to be easy on the ears. All right, so I'm just going to show it again to you one more time where again, we either click on that split at the playhead or click on that Command T, cut it out. Then we're going to do the delete and move. So that is where you're going to do the Command T twice to get your start and your end point, delete and move to get a smooth transition. And then once you're kind of done going through all of that, you can either listen to it all again, or you can just output it as I've shown you how to do the export and then get your complete podcast file. So in here, there's a lot of other settings as well, like for your stabilizer, for adjusting volumes higher and lower. I haven't shown you any of those guys this time, but I wanted to just kind of keep it as simple as possible. So that way, this is a very basic how to create a podcast for free in 3 easy steps. You get your anchor.fm account, you get your music, you get your intro, your outro, and then you basically learn how to edit it and put it all together and get it back out on anchor.fm to distribute it out. If any of you guys have any other distribution channels that you use that are free that you would recommend, comment below in the description because I'd love to hear what other research you guys may have done, because this was actually recommended to me by the girls that had done my first podcast with me, where they suggested this, and I am absolutely in love with it and so grateful for them showing me what an amazing platform this is. All right, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Go ahead and like it if you found it beneficial, subscribe to the channel, and I hope that we will be able to share more educational videos on things that I have basically been learning throughout my branding and trying to grow my business at the same time, as well as helping others grow as well. So much love to you. If you guys have your podcast set up and launched, I would love to hear from you guys. Put in the description below what your podcast is, how I can access it, and I would love to take a listen. So I will hopefully get to be introduced to a lot more new podcasts, and I will also link my podcast below in the description for you guys to enjoy and take a good listen. So again, it is Life by Zareen, and the podcast is Conversations with Zareen. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial today. Bye.